Well, since I've never done this before, I thought I'd start off with something easy as to who I am. Most of you know who I am. But the reason I'm focused on Ralph Waldo Emerson is because I was raised as a Unitarian in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I read the entire works of Emerson. This book belonged to my grandfather. And during the pandemic, I read the entire thing. And I was surprised how much came back to me from, I don't think it's anything bad. I wasn't indoctrinated, but Emerson came back to me because the minister quoted Emerson quite often. There was a little blurb on who I am right now and who I was in previous lives. My first life, I was a wrestler. I loved wrestling. I still love wrestling. I watch all the American Olympic guys. And your body wears out. I had to get that out. Fortunately, my mother was a musician. And so she had me on the piano when I was very little, and I just couldn't do it. I can't do this thing, you know. So, but I wound up with a French horn, and that became my next love. And my wife and I were fortunate enough to, she went to Juilliard. I went to a music school in Philly, and we both got a job first in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong Philharmonic, where we played great stuff. We played Beethoven 9, we played Tosca, and eventually we also played in an orchestra in Venezuela, and eventually we wound up in New York. And with Barb's credentials leading the way, got into Broadway. And we decided to leave New York after I played a run of Cats. And that was around 2000, and things were not good. 2005. But 2000 was when things started to go down, sort of, for the music business. And fortunately, I'm a graduate of Drexel, and so I have a background in, I actually have a BS in physics, but I worked in computers. And that's what allowed us to have our daughter in New York, who became a professional dancer with Pennsylvania Ballet, who now does burlesque at the age of, 40? 40. But she's still an active performer. And my wife, after not playing for 10 years, after we came out here, she stopped. Went back to playing a few years ago and just had the opportunity to do
Mahler First Symphony.
I'm sorry. Okay. I get this way sometimes performing. It's a hazard. Anyway, she got to do Mahler 1, which is a great thing. Unfortunately, is because one of our best friends got COVID. Anyway, that's who we are. Let's find out who Ralph Waldo Emerson is. We all want to know who we are. And I can start this out, I think I will, with a lyric from the Mikado, which is our first performance together since we used to play the horn. I'm in a chorus and she's playing in a production of the Mikado at Doylestown. And it begins like this. If you want to know who we are, we're the gentlemen of Japan. On many a screen and jaw, on many a screen and fan. There you go. I still need to learn the lyrics. Anyway, we all want to know who we are. And basically, Emerson dedicated himself to that project of trying to define who we are. And I thought it would be interesting to humanists Since most of us are atheists, or close to it, what Emerson's concept of God is. So forgive me, I'm just going to read, because I've never done this before. And so if you see the top of my head too much, just snap your fingers, or are we good? So Emerson's big claim to fame, first big claim to fame, was his essay called Nature. And that's what we're going to use to bounce off of. And feel free to interrupt if you have any thoughts, and I'll probably pause because I'm not used to doing this. But if you have any thoughts along the way, feel free. One of the things that Unitarianism did was allow us as kids to go to different churches, one of which was a Quaker church. And speaking up at a Quaker church is sort of a fun thing. And we do it here sometimes, but feel free. So here is Ralph Waldo Emerson's Nature. Our age is retrospective. It builds the sepulchres of the fathers. It writes biographies, histories, criticism. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. We through their eyes. Why should not we also enjoy an original relation to the universe? Why should not we have a poetry and philosophy of insight and not of tradition, and a religion by revelation to us and not the history of theirs? Embosomed for a season in nature whose floods of life stream around and through us and invite us by the powers they supply to action proportioned to nature, why should we grope among the dry bones of the past, or put the living generation into masquerade out of its faded wardrobe? The sun shines today also. There is more wool and flax in the fields. There are new lands, new men, new thoughts. Let us demand our own works and laws and worship. Undoubtedly, we have no questions to ask which are unanswerable. There's the one that we might think a little bit about. Undoubtedly, we have no questions to ask which are unanswerable. But he elaborates a lot. We must trust the perfection of the creation so far as to believe that whatever curiosity the order of things has awakened in our minds, the order of things can satisfy. Want to hear that again? Yeah. We must trust the perfection of the creation so far as to believe that whatever curiosity the order of things has awakened in our minds, the order of things can satisfy. Every man's condition is a solution in hieroglyphic to those inquiries he would put. He acts it in life before he apprehends it in truth. This is one of the transcendental things. He's known for transcendentalism, and it was a powerful thing in the 1800s. He was born in 1803 and died in 1880 something. He almost made it to the age of 80. And in those days, that's doing something. But he acts it as life before he apprehends it as truth. That's sort of a transcendental concept. In like manner, nature is already in its forms and tendencies, describing its own design. Let us interrogate the great apparition that shines so peacefully around us. Let us inquire to what end is nature. So far, he's only mentioned the word God once, and that was at the very beginning. The foregoing generations beheld God and nature face to face. I think he's relating to the Christian God. Unitarianism is an offspring of Christianity. And his first wife passed away young, and I think that sort of headed him out into a different path from Unitarianism. His father was a Unitarian minister. And this was written after that event. Anybody have any hint at what he really means by God at this point?
You mean nature?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a little more than that. We'll come to find out. I missed some. Chapter 1. To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between him and what he touches. One might think the atmosphere was made transparent with this design, to give man in the heavenly bodies the perpetual presence of the sublime. Seen in the streets of cities, how great they are. If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would man believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God, which had been shown? But every night come out these envoys of beauty and light the universe with their admonishing smile. So now we're getting a little closer to what Emerson considers to be God. The stars awaken a certain reverence because, though always present, they are inaccessible. But all natural objects make a kindred impression when the mind is open to their influence. Nature never wears a mean appearance, neither does the wisest man extort her secret and lose his curiosity. By finding out all her perfection, nature never became a toy to a wise spirit. Flowers, the animals, the mountains reflected the wisdom of his best hour, as much as they had delighted the simplicity of his childhood. When we speak of nature in this manner, we have a distinct but most poetical sense in the mind. We mean the integrity of impression made by manifold natural objects. It is this which distinguishes the stick of timber of the woodcutter from the tree of the prophet. The charming landscape which I saw this morning is indubitably made up of some 20 or 30 farms. Miller owns this field, Locke that, Manning the woodland beyond, but none of them owns the landscape. There is a property in the horizon which no man has, but he whose eye can generate all the parts. That is the poet. Let me read that one again. There is a property in the horizon which no man has, but he whose eye can integrate all the parts. That is the poet. There's a famous illustration of this eye that Emerson is talking about, and it's just an eyeball with like a stick figure. And that's his concept of our contact with the world, is we're just this big eye that is trying to see as much as we can of the world. This is a property in the horizon which no man has, but he whose eye can integrate all the parts, that is the poet. This is the best part of these men's farms, yet to this their warranty deeds give no title. To speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of man, but shines into the eye and the heart of a child. The lover of nature is he whose inward and outward senses are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of manhood. His intercourse with heaven and earth becomes part of his daily food. In the presence of nature, a wild delight runs through the man. In spite of real sorrows, nature says, "He is my creature." And in spite of all his impertinent griefs, he shall be glad with me. Not the sun or the summer alone, but every hour and season yields its tribute of delight. For every hour and change corresponds to and authorizes a different state of the mind. From breathless noon to grimmest midnight, nature is a setting that fits equally well a comic or a mourning piece. In good health, the air is a cordial of incredible virtue. Crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight under a clouded sky, without having in my thoughts any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years as a snake his sloth. And at what period soever, life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see the currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. So now he's getting down to it. And again, here's this, I become a transparent eyeball. So, we look at the world, but we're trying to look at ourselves too. And that's where the rub is. I studied physics because I wanted to see if reason could lead us to a logical description of the world. And the best I could get was most, if not all, equations or mathematical representation of the world is at best functional only within certain boundaries. So science can keep on finding more information about where we are, but even that has its limitations, and our functions that we use to describe things are only valid within certain boundary conditions. So I gave up on reason as a way to understand life, because ultimately we have to understand who we are. And if you want to know who we are, let's go back to Emerson. That last thing is probably standing on the bare calamity which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part or particle of God. So, as a bunch of atheists, are any of us sympathetic or empathetic to this? Is this not something we consider?
Well, you don't have any egotism, I always figure out mainly what I am is ego. Sometimes I realize that doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, going on. Oh, this is great. The name of the nearest friend sounds then foreign and accidental. To be brothers, to be acquaintances, master or servant, is then a trifle and a disturbance. I am the lover of uncontained and immortal beauty. In the wilderness, I find something more dear and connate. Is that the way you pronounce that? C-O-N-N-A-T-E, connate. In the wilderness, I find something more dear and connate than in the streets or villages. In the tranquil landscape, and especially in the distant line of the horizon, man beholds somewhat as beautiful as his own nature. I haven't gotten to that. The greatest delight which the fields and woods minister is the suggestion of an occult relation between man and the vegetable. I am not alone and unacknowledged. They nod to me and I to them. The waving of the boughs in the storm is new to me and old. It takes me by surprise and yet is not unknown. Its effect is like that of a higher thought or a better emotion coming over me when I deemed I was thinking justly or doing right. Yet it is certain that the power to produce this delight does not reside in nature, but in man, or in a harmony of both. It is necessary to use these pleasures with great temperance, for nature is not always tricked in holiday attire, but the same scene which yesterday breathed perfume and glittered as for the frolic of the nymphs is overspread with melancholy today. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. To a man laboring under calamity, the heat of his own fire hath sadness in it. Then there is a kind of contempt of the landscape felt by him who has just lost by death a dear friend. The sky is less grand as it shuts down over less worth. The sky is less grand as it shuts down over less worth in the population.
Okay.
So back to the philosophy. Whoever considers the final cause of the world will discern a multitude of uses that result. So this is a mouthful here. The final cause of the world is what he's interested in. Will discern a multitude of uses that result. They all admit of being thrown into one of the following classes. So this is his classification of uses, the final cause of the world. First is commodity, and they're each a subsection of this essay. Commodity, beauty, language, and discipline. We may not get to all these, but we will hopefully get to commodity, beauty, and language, since language was Emerson's thing. Under the general name of commodity, I rank all those advantages which our senses owe to nature. This, of course, is a benefit which is temporary and mediate, not ultimate. Like its service to the soul. Let me read that again. This, of course, is a benefit which is temporary and mediate, not ultimate, like its service to the soul. Yet, although low, it is perfect in its kind and is the only use of nature which all men apprehend. The misery of man appears like childish petulance when we explore the steady and prodigal provision that has been made for his support and delight on this green ball which floats him through the heavens. What angels invented these splendid ornaments, these rich conveniences, this ocean of air above, this ocean of water beneath, this firmament of earth between, this zodiac of lights, this tent of dropping clouds, this striped coat of climates, this fourfold year. Beasts, fire, water, stones, and corn serve him. The field is at once his floor, his workyard, his playground, his garden, and his bed. I think this is one of his quotes. More servants wait on man than he'll take notice of. Nature in its ministry to man is not only the material, but is also the process and the result. All the parts incessantly work into each other's hands for the profit of man. The wind sows the seed, the sun evaporates the sea, the wind blows the vapor to the field, the ice on the other side of the planet condenses rain on this. The rain feeds the planet feeds the animal, and thus the endless circulations of the divine charity nourish man. The useful arts are reproductions or new combinations by the wit of man, of the same natural benefactors. He no longer waits for favoring gales, but by means of steam he realizes the fable of Aeolus' bag. The fable of Aeolus' bag was, Aeolus was a windbag. No, he gave winds to, Ulysses, who was traveling around, and Ulysses' guys mismanaged it, and so they got punished. Anyway, he realizes the fable of Aeolus' bag and carries the 32 winds in the boiler of his boat. To diminish friction, he paves the road with iron bars, and mounting a coach with a shipload of men, animals, and merchandise behind him, he darts through the country from town to town, like an eagle or a swallow through the air. By the aggregate of these aids, how has the face of the world changed from the era of Noah to that of Napoleon? The private poor man hath cities, ships, canals, bridges built for him. He goes to the post office, and the human race run on his errands. To the bookshop, and the human race read and write of all that happens for him. To the courthouse, and the nations repair his wrongs. He sets his house upon the road, and the human race goes forth every morning and shovel out snow and cut a path for him. What would he say now? But there is no need of specifying particulars in this class of uses. The catalog is endless and the examples so obvious that I shall leave them to the reader's reflection, with the general remark that this mercenary benefit is one which has respect to a farther good. A man is fed not that he may be fed, but that he may work. And I'll be darned, this one I remember from as I was a child, at oldest, a teenager maybe. But what more is there? A man is fed not that he may be fed, but that he may work. A nobler want of man, the next chapter, that was the chapter on commodity. This is the chapter on beauty. And this one goes on a little bit. A nobler want of man is served by nature, namely the love of beauty. The ancient Greeks called the world cosmos, which I think means beauty. Such is the constitution of all things, or such the plastic power of the human eye. There's his eyeball again. That the primary forms, as the sky, the mountain, the tree, the animal, give us a delight in and for themselves, a pleasure arising from outline, color, motion, and grouping. This seems partly owing to the eye itself. The eye is the best of artists. By the mutual action of its structure and of the laws of light, perspective is produced, which integrates every mass of objects of what character soever into a well-colored and shaded globe, so that where the particular objects are mean and unaffecting, the landscape which they compose is round and symmetrical. And as the eye is the best composer, so light is the first of painters. There is no object so foul that intense light will not make beautiful, and the stimulus it affords to the sense and the sort of infinitude which it hath, like space and time, make all matter gay. Even the corpse has its own beauty. But besides this general grace diffused over nature, almost all the individual forms are agreeable to the eye, as is proved by our endless imitations of some of them, as the acorn, the grape, the pine cone, the wheat ear, the egg, the wings and forms of most birds, the lion's claw, the serpent, the butterfly, seashells, flames, clouds, buds, leaves, and the forms of many trees, as the palm. For better consideration, we may distribute the aspects of beauty in a threefold manner. So he has subdivisions of defining beauty and beauty as a use. What was that original? Anyway, his philosophy is sort of hard to follow, and his preachings are preaching, but I think we all get his concept so far. So here is the first simple perception of natural forms is a delight. First, the simple perception of natural forms is a delight. So just looking at
perfection again.
Yeah.
I don't. This is where one of the things I find.
Perception?
Yeah, perfection.
Oh, no.
He references it a few times in nature, and nature's not perfect.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, he does get to that sort of, but not. Well, wait till you hear what he does do, though. First, the simple perception of natural forms is a delight. The influence of the forms and actions in nature is so needful to man that in its lowest functions, it seems to lie on the confines of commodity and beauty. To the body and mind which have been cramped by noxious work or company, nature is medicinal and restores their tone. The tradesman, the attorney, comes out of the din and craft of the street and sees the sky and the woods and is a man again. In their eternal calm, he finds himself. The health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired so long as we can see far enough. But in other hours, nature satisfies by its loveliness and without any mixture of corporal benefit. I see the spectacle of morning from the hilltop over against my house, from daybreak to sunrise, with emotions which an angel might share. The long, slender bars of a cloud float like fishes in the sea of crimson light. From the earth as a shore, I look out into that silent sea. I seem to partake its rapid transformations. The active enchantment reaches my dust, and I dilate and conspire with the morning wind. How does nature deify us with a few and cheap elements? Give me health and a day, and I will make the pomp of emperors ridiculous. The dawn is my Assyria, the sunset and moonrise my Paphos, and unimaginable realms of fairyland. Broad noon shall be my England and the senses and the understanding. The night shall be my Germany of mystic philosophy and dreams. Not less excellent, except for our less susceptibility in the afternoon, was the charm last evening of a January sunset. The western clouds divided and subdivided themselves into pink flakes modulated with tints of unspeakable softness, and the air had so much life and sweetness that it was a pain to come within doors. What was it that nature would say? Was there no meaning in the live repose of the valley behind the mill, and which Homer or Shakespeare could not reform for me in words? He worshiped Shakespeare. The leafless trees become spires of flame in the sunset. with the blue east for their background and the stars of dead chalices of flowers. Oh, yeah. And the stars of the dead chalices of flowers and every withered stem and stubble rimmed with frost contribute to something to the mute music. The inhabitants of cities suppose that the country landscape is pleasant only half the year. I please myself with the graces of the winter scenery and believe that we are as much touched by it as the genial influences of summer. To the attentive eye, each moment of the year has its own beauty, and in the same field it beholds every hour a picture which was never seen before, and which shall never be seen again. The heavens change every moment and reflect their glory or gloom on the plains beneath. The state of the crop in the surrounding farms alters the expression of the earth from week to week. The succession of native plants in the pastures and roadsides, which makes the silent clock by which time tells the summer hours, will make even the divisions of the day sensible to a keen observer. The tribes of birds and insects, like the plants punctual to their time, follow each other, and the year has room for all. By watercourses, the variety is greater. In July, the blue Pontederia or pickerel weed blooms in large beds in the shallow parts of our pleasant river, and swarms with yellow butterflies in continual motion. Art cannot rival this pomp of purple and gold. Indeed, the river is a perpetual gala and boasts each month a new ornament. He liked to preach. But this beauty of nature, which is seen and felt as beauty, is the least part. The shows of the day, the dewy morning, the rainbow mountains, orchards and blossoms, stars, moonlight, shadows, and still water, and the like, if too eagerly hunted, become shows merely and mock us with their unreality.
With their what? Unreality.
Unreality. If too eagerly hunted, become shows merely and mock us with their unreality. Go out of the house to see the moon, and 'tis mere tinsel. It will not please as when its light shines upon your necessary journey. The beauty that shimmers in the yellow afternoons of October, who could ever clutch it? Go forth to find it, and it's gone. 'Tis only a mirage as you look from the windows of diligence. Emerson was a sponsor of Thoreau. He actually supported him at times, but that's what was happening at the time. And the Alcotts were sort of like a hippie commune that didn't work.
So what did Emerson do for a living?
Well, his first wife, he had trouble with it. His first wife was wealthy, and so he inherited it. God gave him the ability to support all these. So, but the wife's family tried to get the money from him, and fortunately, he won in court. What was I going to say?
Was he a preacher for a while? I mean, an actual preacher for a while with some kind of stipend for a while.
Yeah. He was a preacher for a while, but then I think he started making money on his writing.
And the lectures.
Yeah.
And the lectures.
Yeah, and lectures. Right. Okay, so that's the first aspect of beauty, just what we see. And he's sort of not really down on cities. I mean, Barb and I are New Yorkers, and in spite, the city has its own natural beauty. If you're downtown when either the moon or the sun is at the end of one of those east-west roads, it's glorious.
So
They call it Manhattan.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And Walt Whitman was into the city because Walt Whitman he was a contemporary, and they knew each other, I think. And, his recognition of city beauty was happening at that time. Okay, so here is the next attribute of beauty. The presence of a higher, namely of the spiritual element, is essential to its perfection. I'll read that again. The presence of a higher, namely of the spiritual element, is essential to its perfection. The high and divine beauty, which can be loved without effeminacy, is that which is found in combination with the human will. Beauty is the mark God sets upon virtue. Beauty is the mark God sets upon virtue. That's one of the, I underlined all the places he mentions God, and how could I miss this one? As a musician, it's hard not to recognize that attribute, and there's something that's unique to music that the other arts communicate to us. It makes us recognize who we are in our relationship. But music is in the moment, and it requires tuning everybody in and tuning the work itself in. And when it goes well, there's just nothing like it. And you know, that's spiritual. You know what makes that happen? Who knows? But it happens, and it's powerful.
I've been listening to the music from Succession, which the guy that wrote this stuff has 4 different LPs recordings of it now for each season. And that the use of the music in that series is phenomenal. The first episode, I said, "What is this music?" And of course, it went on for 4 years.
Yeah.
And that's how you can get the beauty of the music.
Right.
Compared against the sometimes not so beautiful action of the actor.
Well, my show was Cats, and I went to see the produced version of it down in Philly because the conductor's sort of a friend and his wife's a dancer, and we knew his wife. And it was just, I was astounded by how much the music contributes to the drama. Yeah. And, you know, Bernard Herrmann and John Williams. John Williams is one of our heroes. Okay. The high and divine beauty which can be loved without effeminacy is that which is found in combination with the human will. Beauty is the mark of God, or is the mark God sets upon virtue. Every natural action is graceful. Every heroic act is also decent and causes the place and the bystanders to shine. We are taught by great actions that the universe is the property of every individual in it. Every rational creature has all nature for his dowry and estate. It is his, if he will. He may divest himself of it. He may creep into a corner and abdicate his kingdom, as most men do, but he is entitled to the world by his constitution. In proportion to the energy of his thought and will, he takes up the world into himself. All those things for which men plow, build, or sail obey virtue, said Sallust, whoever Sallust is. Anybody know? The winds and waves, said Gibbon, I've heard of Gibbon, but I don't know, are always on the side of the ablest navigators. So he goes on to preach a little bit about this aspect but I'm going to skip ahead because there's sort of references to things in his time that contribute to this concept. Continuing after that, in private places among sordid objects, an act of truth or heroism seems at once to draw itself the sky as its temple, the sun as its candle. Nature stretcheth out her arms to embrace man. Only let his thoughts be of equal greatness. Willingly does she follow his steps with the rose and the violet, and bend her lines of grandeur and grace to the decoration of her darling child. Only let his thoughts be of equal scope, and the frame will suit the picture. A virtuous man is in unison with her works, and makes the central figure of the visible sphere. Homer, Pindar, Socrates, Phocion associate themselves fitly in our memory with the geography and climate of Greece. The visible heavens and earth sympathize with Jesus. And in common life, whosoever has seen a person of powerful character and happy genius will have remarked how easily he took all things along with him. The persons, the opinions, and the day and nature became ancillary to man. So I'm sure we can all remember meeting somebody that we worshipped. I'll always remember meeting Rudolf Serkin. It was like God walking down the hall and reaching out to shake my hand just like I'm one of his buddies. But greatness is a singular thing, and it's not, there's people like Pete Rose, what a great baseball player, but he was a lousy gambler. So we're made up of all these things, but we should be looking to our heroes.
But the quotes you're talking about from Emerson don't seem to take hardship into account at all. I'm thinking this guy lived in an idyllic world where there was nothing.
Yeah.
Thoreau died of tuberculosis at age 44. When Emerson was 60, as he still think nature is so absolutely grand, it was nature that killed his friend and killed everybody he knows. And I mean, people who he knows are hungry. People in the cities are hungry. People in the farms are hungry. Can be not. But had he encompassed hardship into his perspective about God or the divine or the ethereal or whatever you want to call it?
Right. Yeah. I never really.
Yeah. Poverty is the worst.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing something very idyllic here.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
beautiful for its own right, but it doesn't give you an image of the God or the ethos or something.
And it's not for us to profit. He talks about how we can demand profits from nature. We are just part of nature. It's not here for us. It's not here for us to use. And he has that philosophy from.
The only.
It's there for our benefit.
Right. The only reference was that reference to someone who died. But right.
Yeah, Dave, I have to thank you for giving me the opportunity to wrangle with Emerson once again. I had my tangles with the Unitarians coming up. I was raised by atheists. The Unitarians was a way of making us look more conventional, to be more acceptable to the wonderful world of the 40s and 50s in which I was raised. So I have the same response now as an old person as I did then as a kid, which is like there's this soaring language and this billowing philosophy, and if you can get into it, it can be you can really get into it. It can be a pleasure to read. But the upshot, where I always get to, is like, so what? It really is. I'm still disappointed in myself because I feel like I should be, but I don't. is like, so what? You know? When Thoreau was another one.
You say you can celebrate yourself.
Somebody mentioned, you can appreciate that that's somebody that talks to me. So this guy's,
You celebrate yourself and sing yourself.
everything's just fine. You know, like, I don't need, I can't be so entranced with his own self, frankly, that I don't think his ability to project his preoccupations to much of the rest of us is very good. That's all.
Yeah,
I found solace. And solace is the person who already knows everything they need to know. Doesn't need any help from anybody, kind of like Trump.
I know nothing about Emerson. I never have, I probably read a few paragraphs of his, but what, and as much as I can appreciate parts of this, part of me is saying, yep, it's only the 1800s, and here's this white guy sitting on his ass doing a lot of writing, and somebody's waiting on him everywhere. Some woman probably is waiting and fixing his meals and washing his clothes so he can sit around and pontificate. Now, I know there's a lot of beautiful things he's saying. And in fact, when he was talking about the woods and things, it brought me back to my childhood. And it was lovely. And I remembered, yeah, he really did. But I think he gets carried away with himself a little bit.
Yeah, well, it is interesting though that he,
You don't agree? What do you think?
I'm sorry, it's my first hour here.
Tremendously welcome. No trouble.
I would be worried about dismissing Emerson so completely.
We're dismissing
I'm
it.
listening.
One thing, I think contextualizing, he's living during the Industrial Revolution, which I don't think is the context here.
and he was an abolitionist. He was,
So he's living at a time when things are becoming increasingly mechanized, and he is trying to identify the humane in what is becoming, to him, ecologically threatened. So he's kind of an early eco-terrorist. So he's trying to look at nature in the face of an increasingly industrialized front. And also, I don't agree with the egoism and the pontification. I agree with the beauty of the language that we are not used to anymore. True. But I think he's pointing to something that is supra-ego, that is above egoism in nature, which I personally respond to very, very much as a musician, as a person.
this is a well-known conductor here.
It's not so well known because you don't know him. I love that, that's fine. I just think there's something in pointing toward beauty that it's available to everyone. It is a very democratic idea. And I think if you get beyond beyond the beauty of the language, I don't know if you want to get beyond the beauty of the language, but there's something, he's universalist. So
Have a good one.
I think knocking him down because it has a certain tone is dangerous.
Well, and for the ladies, he does, sorry.
He's a creature of his.
Yeah.
True.
Oh, yes.
Very
Oh, yes.
true.
Oh, yes.
And we all are, but part of that, and I absolutely can see everything you've said, and I can agree with that to some extent. But as a woman living in this time and having lived a very, very long time in this time, and historically, I think, like you said, that being universal, he's a universalist.
But that's fine for those who got to sit back and looked at it. Not everyone got to do that.
Okay, so I'm gonna go back to music.
Okay.
So Mahler, we just got to do Mahler. It's fantastic. Mahler never had to do his laundry. Does that mean his music is bad?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm just trying to, and like I said, this particular style of writing, as you said, is not what we're used to anymore. And I think, to me, I think he's a very interesting person. He's got lots of interesting insights, but he came from his little tiny spot that he lived in. And I'm looking at it more politically and trying to be wide, okay, rather than that little spot that he lived in.
But we're always going to be able to go back to, you can look at any 1950s musical, let's say it's a good thing because of its treatment of women. But people sing those songs.
And speaking of that,
Yes.
speaking of that, let's get back, because what I just read, nature stretches out her arms to embrace man. Only let his thoughts be of equal greatness. Willingly does she follow his steps with the rose and the violet, and bend her lines of grandeur and grace, the decoration of her darling child. So there's also this recognition, and one of the people he looked up to, I forget what the woman's name is. She wasn't very famous, but she was famous in that group of people. And well respected. But this sense of maternalism was there, rather than, he uses the father in other references, but in this particular reference, willingly does she follow his steps with the rose and the violet, and bend her lines of grandeur and grace to the decoration of her darling child. And that's a valuable reference, regardless of your status in the world. And his efforts towards abolition indicated his recognition of lower classes. My wife and I have lived in bad neighborhoods. I grew up in Lancaster. Lancaster's squeaky clean. I hated Lancaster. I haven't gone back much at all. And the first place I lived in Philly was West Philly. I went to Drexel. And that place is funky, but I love the funk, man. One of my biggest regrets was missing James Brown up at the Uptown. And in New York, we lived in rough neighborhoods. And we went to Venezuela. Unfortunately, I learned how to speak Spanish because now our area is going to be predominantly Spanish. Allentown is. I don't know if Bethlehem is, but they're good people. They like to have fun, and and I like being down where poverty exists, just because I don't know, it needs to be recognized face to face.
Where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
And the flowery language and his sort of elitist living style. Where are those descriptions of beauty and, the force behind it bringing beauty to the masses? How else is that going to happen? It's not going to come from the bottom. It's got to come from the top, I think.
He has the time to write things.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the guy that's working in the mines isn't going to be able to. Well, maybe, but he's not going to see beauty quite as well as the guy that's sitting up there actually, part of it.
He's not going to have the time to read,
Right.
or the ability to read it, perhaps.
No, but his children might.
That's true of many successful
historically as well as today, right? They have the time because somebody's there taking care of the groceries and the cooking and the cleaning. You know, they don't have to worry about that.
Oh,
In this statement you read there about her being nature and him being, I'm not sure what, does that mean?
The use. Well, since the man's the breadwinner, the use.
So it could be described as man or woman.
Yeah, yeah. But it is interesting that he used that gender for those words. So we'll go on and finish off
Beauty.
the essay on beauty and may get into a little bit of language. But
We're already at 12, already past 12.
all right. So this is the third aspect of beauty. There is still another aspect under which the beauty of the world may be viewed, namely as it becomes an object of the intellect. Beside the relation of things to virtue, they have a relation to thought. The intellect searches out the absolute order of things as they stand in the mind of God and without the colors of affection.
would you repeat that sentence?
Yeah. The intellect searches out the absolute order of things as they stand in the mind of God and without the colors of affection.
Doesn't that do away with beauty? The intellect sorts out the order of things. I'm sorry, I'm being difficult, but not really on purpose. It just comes to me naturally.
Let's see if he explains. The intellectual and the active powers seem to succeed each other. All right. And the exclusive activity of the one generates the exclusive activity of the other. Yeah, this philosophical things are not easy to. The intellect searches out the absolute order of things as they stand in the mind of God and without the colors of affection. The intellectual and the active powers seem to succeed each other, intellectual and active. This is this transcendental again.
Yeah, I personally, when he's talking about without the influence of colors, I think it just means you're trying to be accurate when you're looking at things. You're not being swayed by how you want it to be.
Yeah.
So I still think, but I don't think it says it's not beautiful anymore.
Right. So the intellectual and the active powers seem to succeed each other, and the exclusive activity of the one generates the exclusive activity of the other. There is something unfriendly in each to the other, but they are like the alternate periods of feeding and working in animals. Each prepares and will be followed by the other. Therefore does beauty, which in relation to actions, as we have seen, comes unsought, and comes because it is unsought, remain for the apprehension and pursuit of the intellect, and then again in its turn of the active power. Do I need to read that again? It's transcendentalism, basically, which I was into transcendentalism by the time I was a teenager. I was reading Sartre, which I can't remember much of, but being in nothingness and a priori knowledge. I mean, this Emerson is pretty much into this a priori knowledge, that we come here with a priori knowledge, that we don't just learn by experience alone. Anyway, nothing divine dies. All good is eternally reproductive. The beauty of nature reforms itself in the mind, and not for the barren contemplation, but for new creation. And so, he's more about creation as an active thing, and not creation as Noah's Ark God made the world in how many days or why. All men are in some degree impressed by the face of the world, some men even to delight. This love of beauty is taste. I don't know why that's in there, but anyway. Others have the same love in such excess that, not content with admiring, they seek to embody it in new forms. The creation of beauty is art. And, you know, there are musicians who give up family, who give up everything just to do music all the time. And a lot of the great ones do enjoy other things. And I'm sure it's the same in all the arts and writers and things like that. But, they're so consumed by whatever the quality of the activity. They just have to have more and more. And it's what makes greatness in us. And what makes us look up to great achievement. The production of a work of art throws a light upon the mystery of humanity. A work of art is an abstract or epitome of the world. It is the result or expression of nature in miniature. For although the works of nature are innumerable and all different, the result or the expression of them all is similar and single. Nature is a sea of forms radically alike and even unique. A leaf, a sunbeam, a landscape, the ocean, make an analogous impression on the mind. What is common to them all, that perfectness and harmony, is beauty. The standard of beauty is the entire circuit of natural forms, the totality of nature, which the Italians expressed by defining beauty, il più nell'uno. I wish Trish was here because she corrected my Spanish once, or my Italian once before, but nothing is quite beautiful alone. Nothing but is beautiful in the whole. That's what the il più nell'uno. Nothing is quite beautiful alone. Nothing but is beautiful in the whole. A single object is only so far beautiful as it suggests this universal grace. The poet, the painter, the sculptor, the musician, the architect seek each to concentrate his radiance of the world on one point, and each in his several work to satisfy the love of beauty, which stimulates him to produce. This is art, and nature passed through the filter of man. The word he uses for filter is alembic, which is, I don't know, one of those chemistry things. Passed through the filter of man. Thus in nature passed through the filter of man. Thus in art does nature work through the will of a man filled with the beauty of her first works. The world thus exists to the soul to satisfy the desire of beauty. This element I call an ultimate end. No reason can be asked or given why the soul seeks beauty. Beauty in its largest and profoundest sense is one expression for the universe. God is the all-fair. Truth and goodness and beauty are but different faces of the same all. But beauty in nature is not ultimate. It is the herald of inward and eternal beauty, and is not alone a solid and satisfactory good. It must stand as a part, and not as yet the last or highest expression of the final cause of nature, which takes us back to what his premise about the cause of nature. So that's pretty much the essence of his essay. It goes on with a section on language. There are three aspects of language. Words are the signs of natural facts. Particular natural facts are symbols of particular spiritual facts. Nature is the symbol of spirit. So in the section on language, since it's his thing, it does add quite a bit. to what I was hoping to get to with Emerson, but I think our time's up. And there are a couple of little things in here. Spirit is the creator. Spirit hath life in itself. And that this word spirit has always been something that I have an affinity to, because it's that thing that our reason can't really get a grip on. You know, we can understand a lot of things, but we can't understand ourselves, and that thing that we can't understand in ourselves is sort of spirit, and it's something that we share. And not at all times, you know, and there's good spirit and there's bad spirit. You know, there's nothing worse than playing a bad gig or playing badly or singing badly. But man, when you do it right, wow, this last Bach B minor mass was really swinging. And in spite of the fact that I have no talent for Gilbert and Sullivan, and my wife is in the band, we keep trying to do what we do. And I hope everyone enjoyed the little journey through Emerson's mind.
Yes, thank you.
Very
Thank you very much.
much.